Now, this week was full of news about PlayStation handheld gaming, in particular the PlayStation Portal, which has been a surprise success, I guess, for Sony and probably in everyone's eyes because this thing was not warmly received when it launched. However, it's got a really loyal following. A lot of people really enjoy the Portal, myself included, and it seems to be going from strength to strength. And we had multiple reports from multiple different news outlets covering off leaks from Kepler L2, who has a proven track record when it comes to hardware leaks, in particular for AMD and Sony hardware. And he has stated that Sony are preparing to launch an OLED version of the PlayStation Portal in 2026, this year. How wild is that? So, after the recent software update that unlocked cloud streaming on the device, new leaks surrounding this new Portal make a lot more sense. With the PlayStation Portal OLED, essentially, it sounds like it's going to be a mid-cycle upgrade. Kind of like, I always think of the original Switch when it launched. It was out for a good few years, and then we had the Switch OLED version, which came along with the better screen, and there wasn't many other changes. It was just the better display. The display was also slightly bigger, which makes me wonder, could the PlayStation Portal have a slightly bigger display? That would be cool if they managed to do that without impacting the form factor. Like, if you look at the gameplay on screen right now of me playing Cyberpunk on my Midnight Black PlayStation Portal, there is bezels around the screen which could expand the screen a fair bit. However, the thumbstick housings go right to the edge of where the screen is. So if they could be moved or repositioned slightly somehow, you would then have that extra screen real estate. Or do you just change the design even more than that? Or the easy option, I guess, is the screen just stays the exact same dimensions. However, it is then OLED. There is then potentials. Could it be a high refresh rate panel as well? Maybe going up to 120 hertz for high refresh rate gaming. Maybe that's another thing that will be coming down the line to PlayStation Plus premium subscribers in the future. I'm more focused on just the OLED for the the nicer, deeper blacks, more richer colors, and it will be more power efficient. So I'm excited to see this when it arrives, anyways. And the fact that this is going to happen in 2026. What are we saying, people? We will be talking about another PlayStation event, which is rumored to be happening very soon. We'll talk about that later on in the show. So there is potentials that this could be announced really, really soon. I'm thinking surely this will be later on in the year. Probably around about November time, because then it would hit the kind of the year anniversary when the PlayStation was the Portal was launched. Sorry, it was launched, I think, on November, wasn't it? It was around about that time of the year. So then it would be out for 3 years? Is that right? 3 years? I think it is 3 years. So that would be cool to see. But it also makes me think of PlayStation's other hardware lineup, like the DualSense with the DualSense Edge. I keep thinking, could this be a Portal and a Portal Edge? I think that would sell well, and it could work well. Give us a Portal with an OLED screen, changeable thumbstick modules, back buttons. I think that would be a really, really nice upgrade, and maybe they charge instead of it being $199 like it is just now, it is $299. Would people think that is reasonable for those upgrades? I would give that a go. I think that would be good. The one upgrade that hasn't been mentioned anywhere in any of these leaks, which would be really nice to see, and I don't know if it's likely or not, or whether they would hold this off for a future, proper upgrade like a successor. But if they upgrade the Wi-Fi chip somehow, that would be great. Give us a Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E, something like that would be really good, just to, enhance the connection capabilities of this device. Because remember, this is a streaming device, so why not do something to make the streaming connection as, bulletproof as possible? It is really exciting though. A new PlayStation Portal life cycle refresh coming this year. Sound off in the comments if you expected that. I have spoken about that a lot on the channel, but I really wasn't sure whether it would happen. It seems though that the success of the Portal is causing Sony to look at the Portal differently, do a lot more with it. They're clearly, going to back up with the new hardware revisions as well. And then an actual dedicated handheld too, which we also got mentioned of in these leaks, which we'll talk about right now. So while this PlayStation Portal OLED upgrade is an upgrade for all of us on the streaming bandwagon with PlayStation Plus Premium, which is still not rolled out to all regions, which does kind of suck. There's a lot of people who own the Portal who can't do cloud streaming. Surely Sony would be working on getting that sorted as well. However, this next option might solve that problem, albeit not as soon as the PlayStation Portal OLED would. And it is basically that Sony's long-rumoured native gaming handheld, which we've heard about for a long time, and has been referred to as Project Canis, that is the code name for this piece of hardware, supposedly. We've got some leaked specifications. This is also from Kepler L2 in this same post on NeoGAF, and he basically indicates that the device will utilise AMD's next generation RDNA 5 or UDNA architecture. So that's, if you're wondering what all that is, this techno mumbo jumbo, this is the architecture that the graphics chip is basically built on. And the way to think about it is the PlayStation 5 is RDNA 2. So going from RDNA 2 to RDNA 5, even though it's maybe not as a powerful piece of hardware because it is a handheld and it won't have the same amount of raw power, as in like actual power current going into it, because it's a small handheld, it's not plugged into your wall. It will still be able to punch way above its weight because it's 3 generations on from the graphics processing unit that's in your PlayStation 5. So this is a nice upgrade, and this is my really simple explanation of it. So hopefully it makes a little bit more sense to you all when we talk about this. And basically, the specifications state that it will utilize AMD's next generation RDNA 5, as we have said. Some leaks early on had hinted that it would have a higher compute unit count of up to 20. However, it seems that they've settled on 16 compute units for this configuration, and this decision is probably driven by that golden power to performance ratio here, as at 15 watts TDP, which is typical for portable game handhelds like this, a 20 CU GPU would likely just tank the battery life and experience diminishing returns. So there's no point in doing that due to like memory bandwidth and then like thermal constraints as well. You need to remember, you need to keep this handheld cool while it's doing its thing, especially if it's a slim handheld. I assume it'll have a fan in it. It's not going to be passively cooled, surely. Whereas, the Portal doesn't have all these, high-powered internal components. It is just streaming. It is like almost like a kind of budget Android tablet, which is then just streaming from the cloud, because all the hard work is being done in the cloud, or it's been done on your PlayStation 5 if it's via remote play. Whereas this Project Canis will actually be playing the games on the hardware in your hands. It won't be streaming it from the cloud, so it needs a lot more heft and a lot more power to do that. So to support this hardware, Sony has reportedly updated its PlayStation 5 development kits to include a mandatory low power mode. So this should mean that your existing PlayStation 5 library can scale down to run natively on the handheld. This handheld is expected to launch close to the PlayStation 6, and the Portal OLED will be revealed this year if these leaks are true. We obviously still need to wait for the official word from Sony. One thing though, this has got me thinking. All of these leaks and rumours are talking about the PlayStation 5's low power mode to play PlayStation 5 games. So you may have noticed this has been rolled out to your PlayStation. All PlayStations now have a low power mode. You can set it to that. I don't think anyone does or anyone has. If you have, let me know. I've never went and toggled it on or off. It's basically a test bed for then these games being enabled to run on this lower powered hardware, which got me thinking. Everyone refers to this Project Canis as the PlayStation 6 handheld. What if this is actually not a PlayStation 6 handheld at all? This thing might not actually be attached to, PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 6, other than actually, playing some of the games, which makes me think, could this be a kind of interim standalone type device? What I mean by that is, hear me out, we know that the price of hardware is kind of going through the roof right now because of this AI bubble, and crazy, just ridiculous tariffs being thrown about all over the place, all over the world. The cost of hardware is going through the roof. You look at PC components right now, RAM is going through the roof, solid state hard drives is going through the roof, GPUs, so your graphics cards, is going through the roof. That is going to have an impact on whatever hardware Sony is making, and there has been a lot of rumours that the PlayStation 6 will be getting delayed, so it might not launch till 2030 or after, and that the PlayStation 5 life cycle has been expanded, so it will last out to, like 2030. So that's a 10-year life cycle. Imagine then we're at 2026, 2027, they'll launch this Project Canis handheld, but it's actually a PlayStation 5 handheld, which will play your games locally, instead of it being PS6 handheld. However, due to the configuration and how this thing's built, it could then potentially run PlayStation 6 games, via the PlayStation 6's low power mode when it launches. So I actually wonder if this thing is more going to launch as a PlayStation 5 handheld. And is that something you'd be interested in? I would love that. I'm all for a dedicated PlayStation handheld. The Portal just makes me want a dedicated handheld even more. Not having to rely on an internet connection is the way gaming should be played. Then you can be playing in a train, plane, car, the middle of a field with no internet connection, whatever. You're out camping, you can play your games. Just that's the way it should be, and I'm really excited about that. Whereas the Portal, it is more of about convenience and playing your PlayStation games, maybe about the house in different places. And I know you can travel about with it, but it's not built for that, I'd say. That is what you want a dedicated handheld for. So if this Project Canis turns out to be a dedicated PlayStation 5 handheld, would you shell out the cash for one? And how much would you be willing to pay? That is the big question, because hardware is getting pricey. I think for something like this to have any kind of chance, I don't think they can go much over 500, 600. If it starts costing more than the actual PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 5 Pro, it becomes a hard sell, unless it does have the rumoured dock, kind of like the Switch, where you can just dock it in and it would be able to play on your television also. Then you get a much better value proposition because it's a handheld and it's your home console, which I think would be awesome, because Sony does make great hardware. Just look back at the PlayStation Vita. That thing was light years ahead of its time. So was the PSP when it was launched originally. I'm really excited to see what they can cook up with this Project Canis handheld.